Well, thank you so much, Bryan. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us on the show today.
I'm excited to be here, guys. I really am. I've been looking forward to doing one of these with you guys for a long time.
That's great to hear. Appreciate that. So can you give the listeners a brief overview of yourself and B&B Pools?
Sure. I'm a second generation swimming pool company owner. My dad started, B&B Pools when I was 7. So I grew up cleaning pools every summer. Basically, if I wasn't at school, I was cleaning pools. And then I got to high school, and it really kind of wore me out. I was over it. I wanted to do everything but clean pools in high school. And so when I graduated high school, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I was adamant that I was never going to do clean pools again. Went to college, ended up in a kind of financial job. I was a financial planner at Merrill Lynch and really enjoyed what I did. Had no intentions of coming back to the industry. I really thought my pool days were behind me, but my dad and my aunt, who were partners in the business, were looking for an exit, and I don't know, I just felt called back. So I ended up buying back into the business in 2014, and then saw the company grow and grow significantly. We were very blessed, and went from about 7 employees up to 25, and just recently here joined National Pool Partners and sold the company to them, and then joined them as an executive managing the state of Florida. So it's pretty exciting. I mean, we're family owned business, still consider us family owned, and 32 years in the business, and I love it. I love every bit of it.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing. Where about in Florida are you?
We're in South Florida. Broward County is where we service. We go into Palm Beach a little bit for like Boca Raton and things like that, but mainly here in the Fort Lauderdale area, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Yeah.
Besides the professional side of it, the swimming pool culture in Florida, I've always thought was just really cool. You think of maybe like Scarface, old Scarface movies, and them just hanging out, poolside, different things like that.
It is interesting. It's definitely part of, the water is part of life down here in South Florida. I mean, you can't help but notice that flying into any airport in Florida. You just look out the window and it looks like every single backyard has a swimming pool in it. So it's definitely part of what we do, and not just in terms of work, but also, personally with our families. And it's a great place to be in the swimming pool industry. Let's put it that way.
Right. I bet. Thank you. So we're going to be talking about tracking and optimizing chemical usage today. And, we have a few talking points. The first one is, why is it so important to know your costs?
I think this has never been more important than it is right now, right? I mean, for years and years, we've enjoyed consistency and plenty of availability of the chemicals that we use, and now we took a lot of that for granted. Now we're having to really struggle with that a lot around the country. A lot of products are in short supply, and prices have gone up significantly, and so it's extremely important to know your costs and be able to manage those on a per route, per customer, even per visit basis, so that you can make sure that you're making money. No one wants to go out there and work as hard as we do, and then at the end of the day not have any money left over. And so it's extremely important to be able to find a way to do that, especially now because we're short-staffed. Almost everybody in the country is short-staffed. So what ends up happening is you end up kind of falling downstream. So if you were not cleaning pools before, you may be having to clean them again now because you're short-staffed, or maybe your supervisors that are supposed to be handling some things for you are now cleaning pools, so you're having to do their job. And so when you're working kind of downstream like that, it's easy to let this kind of stuff go because you just don't have the time. And what ends up happening is, your margins get tighter. And then at the end of the summer, you figured out, I didn't make any money. And it quickly lead to burnout quickly, and so it's extremely important to just make sure that you're tracking this type of stuff. I know it's hard, and there's more day than there is time, to do this kind of stuff. I know, but it's extremely important to manage a profitable business. We're not doing this for fun. I mean, listen, we may have fun doing it, but ultimately the job here is to try to make as much money as we can for our families. And, with everything against us right now in terms of supply for chemicals and labor and just everything that's going on, you've got to really be, you got to sharpen your pencil on this kind of stuff in order to make money.
Yeah, has your background in finance kind of help you with this? I mean, how do you see this? Is it kind of like a game? Because in a way, it's a very serious game, but it's kind of cool when you put a plan together and you're checking all that data and you're seeing that you're catching things, you're being proactive, and you're also, like you said, making money and not just kind of paycheck to paycheck where you're struggling to pay the techs and paying this person and paying that person.
Absolutely, I do think it has helped me. In my previous career, it was a numbers game, and so, when I came back into B&B Pools, I was adamant that I was not going to create myself a 60-hour-a-week job. I really wanted to manage and run the business, right? And so, I wasn't always successful at that. I mean, there was many times I got dragged out in the field to do field work, but being able to step back and truly manage your business has allowed us to really navigate a lot of issues that have come up over the years, and try to be profitable in a very challenging season in a very challenging market. South Florida is a very challenging place to do business. Our margins are very low. Around the country, people charge a lot more for pool service than we're able to do in South Florida, and so your pencil's got to be very sharp, to operate where we operate. And I've been very lucky that, I've had great teams around me, and I've made some great hires to be able to keep me in a position to be able to continue managing the business and tracking these things. So yeah, it's absolutely crucially important, because ultimately, like I said, this may be fun to do, but that's not why we're doing it, right? And this is supposed to be a business. I think our industry suffers from immaturity compared to other industries, other trades, right? If you look at HVAC, plumbing, electric, even pest control, right? The per stop visit for those companies is so much higher than the swimming pool industry. And I think a lot of that has to do with our industry kind of lacks maturity, right? There's not a lot of large companies that have been able to kind of bring the industry up. And so there's just a bunch of guys out there hustling, and it's hard. It's hard to do. It's hard to manage everything. What ends up happening, though, is you end up dealing with all the things that are customer facing, and then actually managing the business is where you fall short because you just run out of time. And it's challenging. I've seen great businesses disappear, not because they're not great businesses, not because the owner was not doing a great job operating his business, but because, he had no margin. He wasn't able to manage his business and track costs and track labor to a point where all it took was one significant event and he couldn't survive it. They're gone all of a sudden overnight. And I think we all probably know somebody who that's happened to. But, creating margin inside of your business and inside your life is an important part of doing business. And that starts with tracking your costs. That makes sure that every single time you go to that house how much it costs you. So you can identify problem pools, you can identify issues, and know where you're making money and where you're not. So you know when to exit or when to raise prices.
Right. Thank you, Bryan. I love that. So why is it so important to track chemical usage?
All right. So, it's a cost of good, right? Cost of goods. So as you go into the backyard, there's obviously labor involved. You're back there doing a specific job, and you're charging a customer what should be an appropriate amount for that. When all of a sudden the cost of the goods that you purchase that have to go into that swimming pool, when they start to go up quickly and suddenly, and sometimes even double or triple, then, you can quickly start to lose money and not even know it, right? I mean, you're simple, most areas, like Florida, for example, we make our money in the off season, right? We make our money from December to May. That's where all the profit's driven in our company. Because, the weather's perfect. People aren't really using their pools, because the water level is, quote unquote, too cold. But I mean by that is below 85. But, then the summer comes and our chemical usage triples over the summer, right? So we end up in a situation where we're generally breaking even on revenue on the pool service because our costs go up so much. So if you're not even tracking it, then you have no idea if you're making money or not. You could find yourself in a situation where you don't have the money to pay your employees, or, you're even worse, you might be in a situation where you got to decide, am I going to balance this water this week and really do what's necessary, or am I going to feed my family? We all know what that answer is going to be, right? We're all going to feed our family. So, what you want to do is track your costs so that you can provide a consistent service to your customers. No one wants to be in a situation where they've got to choose to do the right thing or feed your family. And the only way to know if you're charging enough is to track your costs. And once you do that, you're going to be surprised. You're going to realize some of these customers, they're not worth having. Everyone's kind of looking at it from a revenue perspective and chasing after that next customer, that next dollar. Once you figure out how many of your customers you're actually losing money on, you look at things a little differently. And all of a sudden you're like, man, you got to go, and you'll start making some adjustments to those customers' pricing, knowing that, if they leave, you didn't really lose anything. You lost a headache, but you didn't actually lose any money because they may have been costing you money the entire time.
Yeah, there's so many things in chemical usage. I mean, you can identify that which pools have leaks. You can see who definitely needs to drain their pool. If they don't drain their pool, they're going to have to get lost this fall, whatever it may be. There's so many different things that just by tracking that chemical usage, it can tell you.
Absolutely. Listen, leaking pools are the absolute worst. What I tell my staff all the time is if the pool's leaking, we're losing money because we bid our pools based off of, the gallons, the size of the pool, the bather load, the temperature, the things that we can kind of consider if there are trees hanging over the pool. But if you've got a pool that's leaking, you may be drastically underpricing them. Even a couple inches a week might actually, we had a situation recently where it was a standard 15 by 30 pool. And when we figured out we did the math on what, they were losing a couple inches a week. We did the math on how much water we were actually treating over the course of an entire month. And it was like, almost twice the size of the pool, right? I mean, if you consider all the water they were adding to the pool,
wow.
And then you realize this is almost a 30,000 gallon pool by the time they add all the water. And I'm sitting here charging them like it's a regular 15 by 30 standard pool. And, I'm losing money here. And because the customer didn't want to address the leak, right. Which I understand. Listen, money's tight, I get it. But I can't lose money because you don't want to address the leak. That's not fair to me. So being able to find those situations where you're losing money, another way is like a vacation rental. We live in South Florida. There's tons and tons of vacation rentals, Airbnbs. And it's funny. Customers don't usually want to tell you it's an Airbnb. A lot of my customers, they won't kind of admit that they're renting it, but obviously your service staff will tell you right away. They know there's 10 people in the pool every time they show up. That's another situation where you've got extremely high bather load. Tons of people in the pool. Usually the pools are heated to a very, very high temperature. They're just not treated like a backyard swimming pool. It's more like a commercial swimming pool. And so if you're not treating those separately, by managing, your costs and pricing them appropriately, it's worse than a leaking pool.
Right. Thank you. And why should you be identifying problem pools?
So to the point we just discussed, I mean, if you're not managing your costs in the pool business, you're going to quickly figure out you're not making any money. And, so identifying these problem pools are an important part of managing your business. So, leaking pools like we just discussed, vacation rentals, pools that have a ton of people in them, right? I mean, we do some commercial business here in South Florida, and you've got some pools that, it's a regular pool. It has average usage. And then you've got some pools closer to the beach, and they're just busy all the time. There's 10 people in them, or they have 2 dogs that swim in the pool every single day. Extremely high bather load. So, those situations have a drain on your chemicals. They require they have a much higher chlorine demand when your guy shows up. So you end up having to spend way more in chemicals to keep that pool blue and clear than you do the average pool. So if you're pricing everything the same, let's say you've got 10 pools on one street, like we do here in South Florida, there's tons of pools. If 8 of them are regular pools, you're making money, but 2 of them are vacation rentals, or they're leaking, or they have a high bather load. You might be losing money in those 2, but you've priced them all the same because they're all on the same street. They're all approximately the same size. They're very easy to get to. You want to make sure that you're identifying these problem pools so that you can try to make money, because they're killing you. You just don't know it. A couple other ones would be poor circulation. Listen, if you have a pool that's not circulating, it doesn't matter how hard you work. You're not going to win. Ultimately, it's going to get you, and you're going to lose money. Runtime, for example. I have customers that I'm trying to save a few dollars. I'm going to cut it down to 4 hours a day. I'm sorry, man. I'm out. I'm not willing to do business with you at that. I'm not willing to spend more in chemicals to make up for the fact that you don't want to run, your pump. Filter cartridge is another one. We're in South Florida, primarily paper, cartridges, and having a schedule to change them out on a regular basis is important. If they're not changing cartridges, if they're not managing runtime to an appropriate amount, if they don't have good circulation, if they're leaking, all these things, I classify all these as problem pools. And if you're not managing your business and trying to get rid of those, then there's a lot of pools you're losing money on. We did an analysis a few years ago, and we did it on every single pool in our company, and it was very obvious to me that I could have gotten rid of 20% of my pools and made the same amount of money or more. We had the revenue associated with it, which we were focusing on that and the pool count, if you will. But when you actually manage the costs associated with those, it's a lot better for your business. You can actually make more money with less headaches. Very similar to a price increase. Just being able to identify those problem pools is equivalent to a price increase. If you can get rid of those.
Right. Yeah, I love all of that. And it plays such a huge role just in the company culture as well. You have problem pools that aren't working correctly. You've got poor suction, and the customer doesn't want to deal with it. You have a technician that's, struggling at that pool every single week. And maybe that leads to them quitting and going to another company where they don't take on pools like that. So definitely an effect in many different places, right?
Absolutely. One of the best things I ever did, I did it 3 years ago. We were growing, and the challenges that come with growing and your routes kind of getting out of whack. So I went to all my employees and I said, hey, give me your top 3 customers and give me your bottom 3 customers. And the top 3, obviously, we wanted to make sure that we kept those. So we managed those, as we increased prices, we want to make sure that those were, kept in check so we didn't lose them. But the bottom 3, I just fired all of them without even consulting. I mean, I just called the employee or the customer and said, I'm sorry, we can no longer service your pool. And I lost 10, 15 accounts, 20 accounts. I don't even know what the number was. But my employees were never been happier in their entire life. I mean, I got so much reward out of it from them because they were so happy. Because you take these pools that are just a nightmare for them, right? They've got that oak tree hanging over it. Every time you show up, it's a disaster, or they're just spending way extra time. They can't get the filter open. It's just always a problem, right? The pump won't prime. There's always an issue with these pools. And so I just went to my team and said, hey, give me your worst 3. And I fired all of them. And it was probably the best thing I could have done.
Wow. That's super cool. Did any of them say, no, wait, we'll fix whatever problems you want?
Well, yeah, we had a couple customers, it was exactly what they needed to kind of kick them in the pants to get some stuff done because, they were just
nice.
But they offered. I mean, we didn't, at that point, we had already made our decision to let them move on. I kind of jokingly refer to it. I gifted my competitors with these customers. It was a nice gift to my competitors, if that makes sense.
That's a real nice gift. Yeah. Merry Christmas. So, the shortages force us and a lot of the people in the pool industry to try new things. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think everyone's probably doing this already, right? I mean, if you can't get the stuff that you normally buy, and prices are, significantly higher than you've ever had to pay before, right? You start thinking about what can I do differently to accomplish the same goal. I've seen guys that go from, primarily, trichlor tablets to, they're using Cal-Hypo. They're using liquid if they can get it. I'm very lucky. There's, a lot of liquid here in South Florida. But people are trying different things to try to get the job done because they can't find it. Driving around to every local pool store and Home Depot and Costco, trying to buy tablets, whatever you're doing everything you can, right? Just to kind of run your business and get it done. I think, it's good to do that, right? The thing that I would recommend everyone do is kind of have a plan, if that makes sense. If you're gonna do something different, if you're gonna try something new, do a pilot first, right? And also track your costs, right? If you don't know what you're paying for what you're doing now, then how do you compare what that new opportunity looks like? Does it make sense to do that or not? You may be putting yourself in a worse situation by trying something new because you haven't actually managed, the cost of what you're doing versus what the new thing costs. I've seen people go to enzymes and all kinds of things, right? I mean, I've seen people go to salt, start converting their customers to salt as much as possible because they just, the chemicals for, chlorine, trichlor, whatever it is, if you can't get it, you're trying to go to a situation where you can manage your, the pools and your routes a little better. You'll make a little money too. That's ultimately the goal. So listen, everyone's being forced to try new things here, I guess. And that's a great thing. I mean, we've tried new things here and we came out of it thinking this is actually great. We may continue to do this afterwards. But my suggestion would just be, again, manage your costs. Find out how much it costs per dose, right? So that when ultimately you can start tracking, what you're using. Generally in our business, right, we're buying it in as big a quantity as we can for our business, right? We're buying it, so that we can pay the least amount of dollars possible for that product. So you're buying it in quantity, but you're not using it in quantity. You're using it in smaller doses. So, trying to get to a point where you can actually manage the cost per dose on every single pool, so that you can actually get to a point where you can track it and know those costs. And then once you have that, you can compare to other products, whether it be the enzymes or the phosphate remover, all these different things, minerals and salt. And I've seen new cartridges that promise the world. All these new products are coming out to try to address this issue. And I think that there's definitely a market for them. Things that were probably more expensive than they should have been before are making more sense now because in light of all the other cost increases that we're facing. So again, I just don't go blindly into it, right? I mean, do your research, figure out what the dosing is, and figure out how much it was going to cost you to move, and then do a pilot. Run it on 5, 10-year pools, for a few weeks and see if it makes sense to continue. See if you get the results you're looking for, if the math works, and if you're still profitable before you go headlong into a thing that, that you end up regretting down the road.
Yeah. I'm so surprised too that I haven't heard more people like selling outdoor showers, because I always thought that would be such a good idea to kind of back off chemicals, obviously drain the pool when you can, balance the water correctly, and then just emphasize having a shower out there and, rinse off before you, put all those, cooties in the pool,
Listen, I would love that. I mean, a lot of our commercial pools, they're required to have a shower. I can't say how many people actually use them. For all the sand in the pool, I would say probably not many, but, it definitely would help, among other things. And the other thing I'll say is, there's different markets around the country. There's some markets that, you charge extra for the chemicals you use. In that case, you still want to manage your costs. You still want to know your chemical costs because you're charging that back to the customer. You still have to manage it well. But the part that I'm referring to mostly is in my market, chemicals are included. So you're charging the customer a flat price, for pool service. So if your costs are up 50%, the customer doesn't know. They don't care, right? They're getting the same bill. So unless you're going to increase their prices, which I highly recommend you do, but if you're not going to do that, you better start knowing your numbers on the cost side. Otherwise, you're going to run yourself right out of business.
Right. Thank you. And the last question is, why is it so important to not let costs run you out of business? Because you're out of business, right?
Yeah, that's the easy answer. Listen, if you're running a pool company, right? If you're working for a pool company, you've made a decision to move into a career that most of us enjoy and love, right? You're outside. You're getting to talk to people outside, in their backyards. It's about relationships, but it's a very unique and different industry and environment to work in. But again, we're not doing this necessarily for fun, right? If you want to volunteer your time, you can go volunteer your time. But most of us are out here trying to make a living. So if, no one wants to get run out of business here, because of all these issues that we're facing, whether it be increased labor costs, not being able to find people, or all the chemical shortages and increasing costs. It's an extremely challenging time in our industry. Now, I personally think 5 years from now, we're going to look back at this and it's going to be the best thing that ever happened to our industry, because a lot of companies are raising prices and those prices won't come back down, right? So the average price that we charge our customer is going to stay up, once we've raised it. But we're all hoping that some of these chemical costs will come back down back to earth, if you will, once things become more available and the urgency and the scarcity mentality goes away. But I think ultimately we'll look back on this scenario and say, man, that was probably the best thing that ever happened to our industry, because now we're making more money, and we actually had a legitimate reason to raise prices through this, because the entire industry was facing the same thing. A lot of small companies, when they're trying to decide if they're going to raise prices, there's this fear mentality that takes them over. It's like, oh, if I can't raise because my neighbor's going to get all my business. And, listen, all your competitors are dealing with the exact same things you are. Right?
Yeah.
They're all short on staff. They're all paying ridiculous prices for chemicals. Raise your prices, right? And ultimately that will end up saving you a ton of time, because you'll have more margin inside your business. But, no one wants to go out of business. No one wants to have what they've built and worked for, for the most of their professional career and life, disappear. And I think having the mentality that you're tracking this stuff will make sure that doesn't happen. It'll help you price appropriately. And ultimately, listen, the best companies are going to do this, and they're going to win. At the end of the day, they're going to be here in 5 years, and they're going to have a higher customer base, and they're going to be profitable. And the ones that don't do this are going to be the ones that suffer, and they're going to have just a really hard time. You're going to work just as hard, if not harder. You're just going to have less money in your pocket at the end of it. So, track your costs so you can make good business decisions, and ultimately your business will survive and thrive through that. That's ultimately what it comes down to.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Bryan. Really appreciate all of this. This was great information, and I know people will get a lot of value from it. So where can people reach out if they want to get in touch with you?
Well, that's a good question. Thank you for asking. So B&B Pools, my company, we recently joined National Pool Partners. And so
congrats.
Thank you. It's exciting. I'm super excited about what National Pool Partners is able to do, and the opportunities it's presenting to the industry. I really do think that we're going to have a chance to really elevate the industry and our employees and just everything that we're doing. So you guys can reach me by going to go-npp.com. And all my contact information is there. My email address is bbanta, B-A-N-T-A, at go-npp.com. And you guys can reach me at my company as well, B&B Pools in Pompano Beach. So I'd love to chat with you. If anybody has any questions, please call me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Bryan. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time.